I'm so excited you guys signed up. So I'm just going to show you some very simple tricks to elevate your ground meat tacos. And we're going to use ground beef today, but this could be for any type of ground meat. And if you didn't receive the recipes in an email, if maybe you signed up late right before the class, just email me at marsha@smartinthekitchen.com and I will forward that to you. And I hope all of you guys probably follow me on Instagram. It's also Smart in the Kitchen, but I've been posting more recipes there. I usually try to keep all my recipes on my website so they're searchable, but it takes longer to upload a recipe there because of putting in all the search engine optimization and everything else. So I'm trying to just get them up quickly on Instagram right now for you guys. So for anyone who's new, I've been teaching cooking classes for about 20 years, which is crazy. Ever since I went to cooking school in San Francisco at a school called Tante Marie. And that school is no longer around, but it was an amazing 6-month program for professional chefs. And I started teaching at the school when I was there, just assisting visiting chefs and in classes and parties, and then taught a basics series when I was done with my program. So what my mission is just to get more people cooking at home and eating dinner with their families. So I really want to provide simple recipes with substitutions and things you guys can do to make this work for you at home. So this is something that we have all the time, that you guys probably have a lot too. That's why you're here. And it's easy, it's fast, it's simple. So it's a great weeknight dinner. The first thing I want to do is teach you guys how to make my homemade taco seasoning, and you have the link for that. If you don't, just go to Smart in the Kitchen and in the search bar put taco seasoning and you can find it there. So I love to make this in a mason jar or any type of glass jar that you save from, you know, you could have had salsa in it and washed it out and saved it, because then you just shake it up and you can keep it in your pantry and use it as needed. So you can double or triple this recipe. Today, we're just gonna make a single quick recipe that we're gonna use in our tacos. So the first ingredient in this is a single varietal chili powder. And I'm gonna explain what that means. So I have, this is rubbing off on the front, so you probably can't read it, but it's Arbol chili powder. So it's dried and ground Arbol chilies. It's a single variety. You could use chipotle chili powders, and chipotles are just smoked jalapenos. So chipotle chili powder is dried chipotle chilies, which are dried smoked jalapenos ground up into a spice. There are some amazing different single varietal chili powders you can get, but right now it's kind of tricky to find a special ingredient if you don't have it. So I'm going to show you a couple other ideas. So I love keeping this Arbol chili powder in my pantry, but I also have a shortcut, which is just chili powder, regular old chili powder. And if you guys have chili powder at home and it's close by, go get it, because I want you to read the ingredients and see what yours says. The back of this one, chili powders are oftentimes a blend of spices. And it's deceiving for people because they have no idea what they're buying when they're buying chili powder. So I have 2 different chili powders here. I prefer this one just because the ingredients are cleaner. This one works too if you have it. But chili powder is oftentimes a spice blend. This one has organic chili powder, organic oregano, coriander, garlic cloves, and then it also has some allspice in it as well. And that's it. My eyes, I really need readers because I can hardly read that. But it's a spice blend. You can use this for the recipe as well, and it'll turn out delicious. It's just gonna have some extra flavor notes depending on what's in your spice blend. So I'm gonna use my single varietal because that's what I have. I'm gonna add a tablespoon of this. And don't worry about exact measurements. This is a blend of spices. It's honestly gonna be delicious no matter what. So I'm getting rid of my other chili powders. We're gonna use cumin. This is already ground cumin. I love grinding my own cumin. If you have cumin seeds, you can grind them in a clean coffee grinder. and they smell amazing, and they're so, I hate it when your utensils for measuring don't fit into your spice jar. Okay, we have a teaspoon of ground cumin. That didn't all quite come out. It's a little more. The cumin smells so good. This is paprika. It calls for sweet paprika in your recipe. If you only have smoked paprika, that's fine. If you don't have paprika, leave it out. It's not gonna ruin it. So this is also a teaspoon of paprika. And then garlic and onion powder. So I have ground garlic powder right here, and it's half a teaspoon. I'm gonna add this, woo, poured a little extra in there on accident. And then our garlic, or onion, sorry, that was garlic. Okay, that was not coming out very well. And then the last ingredient is cayenne pepper. And I should say in the recipe that this is optional, because if you have people in your family that don't love spice, you can leave it out or cut it in half. It calls for just 1/4 of a teaspoon. Sometimes I just add like half that amount, and that's fine. Then give everything a stir, and it comes together and looks like the taco seasoning that you would buy in a paper packet at the grocery store. So why would you want to make this yourself when it's so easy and relatively inexpensive to buy it? The reason is, I also forgot to add my salt, so I'm going to add salt in a second. The reason you would want to make this yourself is look at the ingredients the next time you buy a packet of taco seasoning. Unless it's an organic spice blend, it's going to have probably some additives that are maybe questionable, like anti-caking agents, silicone dioxide, MSG, things you may not want in your taco seasoning. It could also have a ton of sugar or a ton of sodium. So when you make it yourself, you can taste the taco meat as you're making it and decide if you want more salt or less salt. So I am gonna add a teaspoon of salt really quickly. Hold on, guys. And this is my Redmond real salt. If you guys watched the class last week, I got out all the bags of salt that I use and showed everyone. Redmond Real Salt is an awesome company based in Utah, and they mine this salt from ancient salt beds from the Great Salt Lake, and it's an amazing mineral salt. So I'm just gonna add that in. And then, like I said, if you want to make it in a jar, you can make a double or triple recipe, but I just made enough for today because I already have a bunch of this that I keep in my pantry all the time. So the next thing I want to do is show you guys, I'm going to set this aside so we can use it in our tacos when we make them. The next thing I'm going to do is show you how to cut an onion. And I'm actually going to tilt this a little bit so you can see what I'm chopping. So I would love to show you guys on here how to hold your knife. When you're holding your knife, you don't want to hold it like this or like this, because it's naturally just pulling my wrist and pulling my hand down. You want to choke up on the blade, and this middle finger is resting right behind the bolster of the knife, and then wrap your hand around. And you're pinching the blade with these two fingers. It's a much more secure way to hold your knife, and it won't slip. Whatever you're cutting, you want to bring it close to you. You want to bring your boards close to you so you're not reaching far away from where you're standing. Always tuck your fingers under and keep your fingers loosely on top. This is just half of an onion. And I have some knife skills videos on my website, you guys, if you want to watch this, or on YouTube. But I have a really recent post on knife skills, and I will send that out in an email after this class so you guys can watch the full video on how to cut an onion. So the root is attached, the top is cut off, and it's just cut in half. I'm gonna cut slices horizontally and vertically. And the closer these slices are, the finer the dice is gonna be. You don't wanna go all the way through because you want this to stay together. Then I'm gonna make slices vertically almost all the way to the back, and keep your fingers behind the knife and tuck your fingers under. Then when I go back over it, you'll see it's already starting to chop itself. These are all just nice pieces of chopped onion that are falling off. Then when you go over it, you guys will see it's coming off just totally chopped and ready to use. If you guys practice this, it is an awesome skill to learn because it will help you make your prep time so much faster and more efficient. And then you just end up with this little teeny tiny piece. And I just started composting, so I'm gonna save that to put in my compost. I have to take off the sticker later after this class. Okay, so we have our chopped onion, and you can go back over this if you want it finer when you're done. Just keep your hand on top and move the base of the knife back and forth, the tip on your cutting board. So I'm gonna heat up my pan to get our pan ready to saute the onions, and then add a little avocado oil so that heats up before we add our onion. You always want to preheat your pan, guys, because if you don't, whatever you add to the pan just sits in the pan and sticks to the pan. If you have a hot base before you add your oil or your food, whenever something hits, it creates a reaction right away so that the food sears and doesn't stick to your pan. That's why when you're making scrambled eggs, if you don't, and I have an awesome scrambled egg video on YouTube also, if you don't preheat your pan and add some fat to the pan, your eggs just stick to the pan. So if you ever end up with a pan that is impossible to clean after you've made scrambled eggs, it's because you haven't preheated your pan enough and you haven't preheated the fat to cook the protein. So today I'm using a Staub pan that is awesome for just about everything. You could use any type of saute pan or non-stick pan to make this. And guys, just as a reminder, keep adding any questions that come up to the chat feature and I'll answer all of those questions at the end. So I'm heating my pan. And when we're making this today, I'm gonna add a little bit of avocado oil, not too much because the meat has fat also, but I want enough so that our onions can saute nicely while they're cooking in the pan. And I just wanna grab something to show you guys really quickly. Hold on one second. Okay. I have a post of kitchen essentials that I'll send you after this class. This is called a bench scraper, and it's a pastry tool for making pastry so that you don't use your hands when you're making pie crust or dough and heat the dough. It's awesome also for getting all of your chopped veggies into a pan. So I wanted to show you guys that, and I'll send you a link for that too. So hold on one second. We're gonna use this avocado oil today. You could use grapeseed oil, you could use olive oil, you could use a little bit of spray, any fat. And I'm just adding about a teaspoon, really, just a little bit so that I can add my onions. So I wanna let the oil heat before I add the onions and kind of move it around. And you'll notice when you do this, that when your oil is hot, it starts to get shimmery, almost like it has legs. Like if you've ever had red wine and taken a sip out of the glass and you'll see kind of legs on the side of the glass, that's what the oil looks like when it's heated in the pan. So I just noticed that, so I know my oil is hot and I'm gonna add the onions. And you should always hear, I hope you guys heard that awesome sizzle when the onions went in. So another thing I want to talk to you guys about, and I'm going to fix the screen again, bear with me, is you want to salt as you go. So now that my onions are in the pan, I'm going to add a little bit of salt just to flavor that layer of ingredient before we move on. So salt as you go, a little bit at a time. And it's hard for me when I'm writing recipes. It's so difficult for me sometimes to say how much salt to add because I add it in little tiny increments as I go. And that's a great way for you to try to season when you're cooking, because then you're seasoning all the layers of flavor and enhancing the flavors instead of just finishing your recipe with salt and making something taste salty. So I'm adding my salt. We're just going to give this a stir. I have that on medium heat, and I just want to cook the onions until they soften. So they don't need to be caramelized, they don't need to be brown. It's 2 or 3 minutes until they soften up, and then we're going to add our meat. So while those are cooking, I want to talk to you guys about the meat for this recipe. So the recipe I sent you guys calls for any type of ground meat, and I'm telling you, I've made this with ground pork, ground turkey, ground lamb, ground chicken, and ground beef. It's all good. And don't worry about the fat content of the meat. The higher the fat content, honestly, the more flavor in the meat. But if you're watching your saturated fat, then get a lean ground meat. It's okay. We are doing, the recipe calls for 1.5 pounds, I think. We are doing 2 pounds just because that's what I had in my freezer, and I'm not making any special grocery store trips right now, as I'm sure you guys aren't either. So really it could be 1 to 2 pounds of beef for this recipe. It's fine. I like to make a double recipe of this sometimes and save the seasoned and cooked meat in the refrigerator, because then if you're like me and you have teenagers that are hungry all the time, they can just take some of the meat and heat it up in a tortilla for a quick snack. Or you can make nachos with the extra taco meat, or you can make a salad and put a little bit on for yourself. So it's good to have extra, and don't worry if you make a big batch. So my onions are softened over medium heat. I'm going to add my ground beef to the pan, and then I'm going to salt that meat a little bit. So just break it up a little bit. And I'm going to add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. That might have seemed like a lot of pepper, but my pepper is not coming out of my grinder very well because I need to refill it. So it wasn't actually that much. It probably was like 3 regular turns of pepper. So while that is softening, I just want to tell you guys a couple things about making taco meat. So break it up with your knife as it cooks, but also grab a pastry blender or a potato masher and have it on hand. Because once the meat gets to the point where it's cooked, but it's kind of clumping up in pieces still, we're going to take that and mash the meat to break it up. So I'll show you what I mean. This is a potato masher, and I can show you a pastry blender also. So when the meat is almost all the way cooked, I'm going to mash it up with a potato masher to break up the meat. It's a great trick for ground meat so that it just breaks up easier. Sometimes it's like, you know, you're standing there forever trying to break up the meat in little tiny pieces. We're going to break that up. While the meat is cooking, you guys, I usually wait to add the seasoning until it's almost all the way cooked through, but I want to tell you how much I usually add. So it's about a tablespoon of the taco seasoning per pound of meat. So today, since I have 2 pounds of meat, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of the taco seasoning, and that's in your recipe. So just sprinkle that on top. It smells so good. And let that keep cooking. I wish I could show you guys what was inside the pan. I really need a higher tech setup at this point in the state of affairs in the world. But everything is sauteing. I'm going to stir it together. And then once the meat is totally cooked, we're going to add some chicken stock. And the reason we do that, I like beef tacos that taste like the old school 1980s tacos that maybe many of us used to have, which are from a packet that tells you to add water or chicken stock. And so all of the spices kind of get emulsified and turn into this saucy, delicious, you know, final product. So to make this in today's sort of healthier world, I add a cup of either water or chicken broth. And I have some homemade chicken broth that I made about a week ago that's been in our refrigerator. And if you do make chicken stock, and I'd love to do a class on that, just some tips for making great homemade stock, I kept it in my refrigerator all week because I knew I was going to use it for a couple different things. But once a week, if it's refrigerated, you want to bring that stock up to a boil on your stove to kill any bacteria that has developed after sitting in your refrigerator. So I brought the rest of my stock up to a boil, and I'm just going to use 1 cup of it to deglaze my pan in a second when this meat is cooked. I'm just giving it a stir. It's almost there. It actually looks great. So I am using, this is going to be hot because it was right by the fire. This is a 1/2 cup ladle, so I'll do 2 of these into the ground meat. So that just helps to bring everything together, emulsify the spices with the meat. And I'm also gonna add some tomato paste. And I wanna show you, this is the tomato paste I'm using. It's Bio Natura brand in a glass jar. I either use this or I use a tube of tomato paste that you can buy at almost any grocery store. And I have some of that in my refrigerator also. Trader Joe's sells it, H-E-B, Kroger, anywhere. And I like those as opposed to a jar, or a can of tomato paste, because when you open a can of tomato paste and you use your 1 tablespoon, it's a real pain to store the rest. And sometimes if that's all I have, I'll put the remainder of that canned tomato paste in a glass jar in the refrigerator or the freezer. Just label it, because you're gonna think you know that that's tomato paste and you will forget and you won't know what it is. So we're adding just a tablespoon of this tomato paste. I love the flavor of tomatoes, and I love the flavor that this adds to the tacos. If you don't have tomato paste, don't worry about it. It's gonna be just as good without it. Or you could add just a little bit of tomato salsa, like even like a paste picante type salsa. Add just a heaping tablespoon of that to your mixture. So we're gonna stir this up. And I'm not ready to use this quite yet because it's not totally cooked through, and you want the chicken stock to evaporate. And it's gonna seem really liquidy when you first add that chicken stock, but it evaporates, and then that flavor just enhances your taco meat. So this is really, I wonder if I lift up a little bit of this, if you guys can see it. This is what it's starting to look like. I don't know if you can see that. It's starting to come together. I'm gonna let it simmer and sit there while I talk you guys through the quick pickled red onions. And I'm just gonna put this over here so I can use it in a second. So I love pickled red onions, and I think sometimes people are afraid of them when I decide we're gonna make them in a class, because sometimes people just aren't big onion fans. But when they're pickled, the flavor just mellows out and they become really vinegary and tart, which I also love those flavors. And they're not just an amazing taco topping, but they're delicious tossed in salad, added to sandwiches. I love them on bagels and cream cheese with some crunchy salt. They just have an awesome flavor. And onions are great for you. They're antibacterial. They're great to have right now. They're good for your immune system. Garlic and onions. So I'm gonna start by cutting the onion, and we have a whole red onion. So you guys will be able to see a little bit better this time. This is the root, and it has those little kind of tendrils that grow into the ground, and this is the top. And this gets confused sometimes by people in classes. They will accidentally cut off the root instead of the top. Just look for the part that will kind of open. The top of it opens up because it's where the onion has grown together. The root has the pieces that grow into the ground. So do not cut off the root. That is the glue that holds the whole thing together so it doesn't open up all over your cutting board. So we're just slicing these today, so I'm gonna cut off the top. Again, hold your knife correctly, tuck your fingers under. I'm saving those for my compost. I'm so proud of myself, you guys, that I started composting. I've been wanting to do it for, like 5 years. Finally learned how to do it in the last 2 weeks. And then once you cut off the top, you have a flat surface. So this isn't gonna roll around your board. So no matter how you wanna cut your onion, if you're slicing it or chopping it, cut off the top and then put it on that flat surface. Then we're gonna cut it in half from top to bottom, right through the root. Now we have an even better flat surface to cut with. We're gonna peel it, and it's much easier to peel it at this stage, you guys, than it is to try to peel it when you've just cut off the top or when it's full. I've seen people try to do that in classes, and I'm like, wait. First cut off the top, cut it in half. It's so much easier. So since we're slicing these, I don't have to do the horizontal and vertical cuts because we're not chopping it. I'm just gonna tuck my fingers under and cut thin slices. And you can use your knuckle as the glide, like I'm just moving my knife a tiny bit back, because the thinner these are, the better they are once they're pickled, because you want them really thin, like almost like tendrils. Okay, and this actually is making this is a large red onion. So if you don't want to use a whole onion for this right now, like a lot of recipes right now that call for a whole onion, I've been using half an onion because I want to conserve my ingredients, and it's not going to make a big difference in the flavor outcome. So since this is a really big red onion for me, I'm only going to make half of it as pickled, and then I'm going to save the other half in the refrigerator, and I can use it for other recipes. And you guys, almost any time in a recipe, if it calls for a yellow onion or a white onion, you can use red too. So they're pretty interchangeable except for very few instances. So use them interchangeably, especially right now. Okay, so to make our pickled onions, we're gonna heat a cup of vinegar and a cup of water. And if you're making half an onion, you could probably get away with half a cup each of liquid if you want to conserve your vinegar. Just do an equal amount of vinegar and water. So we have 3 vinegars here that I want to show you guys as options. The recipe calls for rice vinegar, but you can use apple cider vinegar, you can use champagne vinegar or white vinegar, or rice vinegar. And I don't have that much rice vinegar left. I have about that much. And I use it a lot in Asian cooking or to make dumpling sauce or things for my family. So I'm not going to use it today because I want to conserve it. I have the most amount of this white wine, so I'm going to use this. It's actually champagne vinegar. So either any of those will work. And I'm going to do 3/4 of a cup of vinegar and 3/4 of a cup of water. You just want an even amount. Don't worry too much. But if you worry about following your recipe exactly, just do a cup and a cup, and then you won't worry. And then an equal amount of water. I'm gonna grab my pan. Okay, we're gonna heat that up. We're gonna keep our tacos going. And I'll show you that meat, you guys, once it's done, so it gets a little closer. I'm gonna add the vinegar and water to the small pan. And then it calls for a tablespoon of salt, which might seem like a lot, but that's part of the pickling solution. You want that salty base. This is a half tablespoon measure, so I'm adding 2 of this. So that's 1 tablespoon of salt. Give it a stir. And then as soon as that comes to a boil, we're gonna pour it over our onions in a glass bowl and then just let this sit at room temperature. This is the easiest recipe, you guys. And there are other recipes out there for something similar that are made with a lot of oil. I like it with just vinegar and water because it makes it a very healthy condiment that doesn't have a lot of fat, and it just adds a lot of flavor to whatever you're cooking. But I love it on tacos, and I think I forgot to mention, I love it on burgers also if you grill burgers. So I can hear the liquid almost coming to a boil. I'm gonna mix up our tacos, and one more reminder, add your questions to the chat feature or any ideas for other future classes you would like to see, and I'll answer all of those at the end. You guys, the meat is looking awesome. It's almost totally cooked. And I just want to mention, I did not drain the fat today because I didn't feel like dealing with it on camera, to be honest. But if you want to do that at home, if you're using a fattier ground meat, you can drain the fat while the onions are in the pan with the meat before you add the liquid. So before you add the spices or the tomato paste or the chicken stock, drain off some of the fat if you would like to. I just was feeling lazy, so we're gonna have a really delicious, flavorful ground meat for our dinner tonight. And another thing I wanna tell you guys, you can use this taco meat for more than just tacos, obviously. You can use it for enchilada filling, and I wish I could get you guys an easy recipe for that. You don't have to worry about frying your tortillas ahead of time. You can just soften them in the microwave, roll them up with some taco meat inside, and cover everything with a good store-bought enchilada sauce like Frontera or Hatch. Top it with some cheese and bake it at 350. It is the easiest dinner. You can fill hollowed out bell peppers with the taco mixture. You could add a can of drained and rinsed pinto beans or black beans to add some fiber to the mixture. And if you want to sneak in more vegetables to your dinner, when you add the onions, the chopped onions to saute, you could add a finely chopped green pepper. You could add a finely chopped zucchini or some fresh tomatoes just to add some more vegetables and nutrients to what you're making. Okay, so the mixture of vinegar and water is boiling. I'm gonna pour it right over, hopefully you guys can see that, the red onions. And I'm just gonna kind of tap those down into the hot mixture. As the onions cook in this, because they're cooking slightly in this hot mixture, they will wilt and soften and get more pliable. So just let them sit. Sometimes I'll cover this with plastic wrap. If, say, I wanted to eat dinner 15 minutes from now, I would cover it with plastic wrap so it really steamed quickly and created those pickled onions. But these can just sit out on your counter for an hour or so until you're ready for dinner. So I'm just gonna put those aside. I'm gonna try to grab some of the taco meat to show you guys what it looks like. And then I wanna tell you a couple more things, and then we will go through questions really quickly. Okay, so I'm gonna take my potato masher and just grind up the meat a little bit. Almost all the liquid has evaporated for me. I'm gonna put some in a little glass container so you guys can see what it looks like. So that's what mine looks like. It looks like typical taco meat. The only thing I would say to you at this point is I always tell people in classes, taste what you make. Salt as you go and taste what you make, especially before you serve it. I mean, how many times have you made something for dinner, you serve it, and you're like, oh, I wish I had added more salt, or I wish I had added more lemon juice or acidity or whatever it is. Taste what you make no matter what it is, and then think about how it tastes, and you'll develop that flavor memory and know how to season things. So I am going to taste this on camera. Hold on. This is a measuring spoon I didn't use because I don't want to go get a spoon. It's so good. I'm not just saying that. It doesn't need any more salt. It has really good seasoning, a little kick of cayenne at the end, and it has a little bit of a smoky flavor from the paprika. So this is going to be, since I didn't contaminate this part, I'm adding it back. So I'm going to put that on simmer and cover it. And if you have leftovers, guys, you can freeze it. So if you're making this, make a double or triple recipe. The amount that you freeze, make sure it's at room temperature before you put it in the freezer. You can freeze it in a glass jar or a Tupperware container, and just label it, like I said, so you remember what it is. It might look like something that you're going to remember what it is. 4 months from now, when this is all behind us, you might get that out and have no idea what it is. So label everything that you freeze and date it. And I would use it in the refrigerator after 5 days. If it's in the freezer, use it within, some people would say 3 months. You can use it within 6 months, but ideally within 3 months, use that taco meat. And your freezer is your best friend right now, so you don't have to make dinner over and over every night. I have extra soups in my freezer, extra homemade meatballs, sauces, bolognese sauce. Do yourself a favor and freeze anything. So what I'm going to do now is just go through some of the questions. I'm going to move my knife so I don't accidentally lean on that. And bear with me. Bring you guys closer. I hope I'm not like right in your faces. Okay, I guess you guys can see all these questions also. Okay, arbol chili powder. Arbol is the type of chili. And there are other types of single varietal chilies out there. So if anyone jumped in late, the chili powder that we used for our homemade taco seasoning was this one. It's a arbol chili, or it might say chili de arbol. Mine is like rubbing off. You can find this at Whole Foods or Central Market or probably almost any grocery store. But if you can't find like dried chipotle chili powder or dried arbol, you can use a chili powder. And it says on this one, blend. Some of them don't. Like this one just says chili powder. You would think this was maybe a single varietal chili powder, but always look at the ingredients for chili powder, because you'll start to realize that their spice blends 90% of the time. Okay, so another good question right now during COVID, where would you find arbol chili powder? What I would do, and what I've really only been shopping once a week or every 10 days, really. And what I do, and I'm gonna cover this in the workshop I do about meal planning and grocery shopping, I make a shopping list. I draw like 4 square, and I write my shopping list like a grid based on the organization of the store. So in the top left-hand corner, it's produce, because that's the first thing you come upon when you get in the store. This part is meat and seafood, because that's where you go next. This part is dairy and cold items, because then usually the layout of the store is dairy and cold items. And then this is aisles and miscellaneous. So if you organize your grocery list of what you need to buy, you can get through the store quicker. And right now, we want to get through the store fast. A couple other of my top tips, if you guys can't make the workshop later on, is take your own bags right now. That way you don't have to even touch a cart. Have a couple big bags on your shoulder. Produce you can get with a plastic bag and not even touch the produce. You can just, like you would if you're walking a dog, like put your hand in the plastic bag, pick up the produce, get it in the bag, and put it in your own bag. And then you can wash that when you get home. And then when you get home right now, keep your grocery bags on the floor in one spot. Where I keep mine is around the corner before I even come into the kitchen. And then I like kick everyone out of the kitchen when I come home from grocery shopping right now. I get everything out and put it on the left side of the sink, wash everything, put everything away, wash my hands before and after, and then I disinfect the sink. It's just being extra careful and making sure the germs, you know, don't end up in your house from being out and being in the grocery store. But the other thing I would say is substitute right now. If you can't find what you're looking for, don't spend a million minutes looking around and checking every bottle. Buy whatever you see. So if you can't find the R-Ball chili powder right away, grab any type of chili powder, blend or whatever you see, and move on. So today I used my Redmond real salt, which is a finer grind. I would compare it to like Himalayan salt. But I also use kosher salt for this. And kosher salt, because it's flaky, has more air in the volume. So per, you know, volume of 1 tablespoon of kosher salt, it's going to be slightly less salty than a fine grind of salt. Just because if you're using a fine grain, those grains are more tightly packed, so it ends up more salty. So just taste as you go. If I had used kosher salt today, I may have had to add a little more at the end to finish it off, but I didn't have to at all. So wooden boards, I love, as you guys can tell from my wooden utensils in the background, I love wooden cutting boards. It's what I've always used. I don't really use any plastic boards. I have a few small ones that sometimes I'll pack for demos. I like wood because it's better for your knives. It's more forgiving on a sharp knife blade. And the best way to clean your cutting board is just clean it with hot soap and water right away. Dry it really well. When I dry my cutting boards, I stand them up on the base usually so that they don't warp. And you just want to dry them as well as possible, and don't stack them until they're dry. Sometimes I'll salt my boards. I'll take like a rock salt, lay out all of my boards. I do this like once a year. I don't do it very often. I'll salt the boards with some, you know, it could be kosher salt or rock salt, and it draws the moisture out of the boards. I'll do that before I go to bed and let it sit all night and draw that moisture up. Then brush off the salt into the sink, and then take some mineral oil or cutting board oil on a paper towel or an old kitchen towel and just re-oil your boards. I only do that once a year. My boards last a fair amount of time unless they get warped, and then I move them on. But if you take care of them, they can last you a long time. Okay, why do I prefer avocado oil? Okay, so this is something I've learned over time. I do not use canola oil anymore. If that's all you have right now, it's okay, it's fine. Use it. It's just not the best choice. So when it comes time to replace it, use avocado oil, which is a high heat neutral oil. And when you hear someone say neutral oil, it means it doesn't have flavor. So olive oil has flavor usually, or coconut oil has flavor. Avocado oil or grapeseed oil are high heat oils that won't smoke, and they're just low in saturated fat. It's a healthy vegetable oil. There's nothing that grows on a plant called canola. It's a man-made product that was invented in Canada, hence the CAN, and it's from rapeseed. And it's just become more and more processed over time. And so it's been said to cause inflammation and all kinds of other things that I don't want to get into because I'm not a health professional. I'm trying to help you guys just cook the best possible way you can. How long can you keep chicken stock if you're bringing it to a boil once a week? That's a really good question. So when I was in cooking school, we made chicken stock once a week, and we made it in big vats that were kept in our walk-in at school. And that stock got used until it got used up. And we just boiled it once a week. But we went through a lot of stocks. We were cooking every day and we were cooking for events at night. So I would say after 2 weeks, after 2 reheatings, I probably wouldn't use it again. So if you're down to the end of your chicken stock and you just have a little left, warm it up, put it in a mug with some ginger if you have it, or some, salt and pepper, and just sip it because it's so good for you. It's a great snack. It's, don't throw it down the sink, drink it. But I would use it up within a couple weeks. In general, when to use Diamond Crystal and when to use Redmond? Okay, that's a really good question. They're kind of interchangeable. You can use them as all-purpose cooking salt. I have both of them on my counter all the time. I'm running low on my Diamond Crystal kosher salt. So I didn't want to use it today because I honestly don't even have 2 tablespoons left of it to use. So I use the Redmond because I have more of it. I tend to use the Redmond salt for things like baking, for salting my pasta water, which if you guys missed the pasta class I did last week, always heavily salt your pasta water when you're cooking. It just adds a ton of flavor to the final outcome. But you can use them interchangeably. Do you find the tube of tomato paste near the cans at the grocery store? Yes, you can find them in the aisle where canned tomatoes are. How do you save an onion? That's such a good question. If I know I'm going to use it the same day, I have a bowl of onions, which are always on my counter. I'll show you guys. So these stay out on my counter. If I know I'm going to use up the leftover half of an onion the same day, I'll just leave it out. If I'm not going to use it, I put it in a plastic Tupperware. I had one, but I threw it in the sink because one of these, the half of an onion I used for the tacos, was left over from something else. So I put it in a Tupperware container or a baggie. I prefer to use a Tupperware container because it's reusable. And then I put it in the refrigerator. Your pickled onion recipe says 2 teaspoons of salt. Oh, where 1 tablespoon. Oh, whoops. There's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, so I put in more than it calls for. You guys can put in 2 teaspoons. It won't make a huge difference. Once those onions are done, I'm going to show you in a second, we take them out of that liquid to store them, so some of the salt stays in the liquid. Would love to see a chicken soup. Okay, that would be fun. Can you pickle other vegetables in the same way? Yes. Add some sliced jalapeno to the pickled red onions if you want, or some thinly sliced carrot would be delicious. What brand is my knife? Okay, my knife is, I have 2 or 3 different kinds. This is a Zwilling Pro made by Henkel's, and it's a really nice German knife that's heavy. And when people are looking for knives, it's hard right now because if you're looking for a knife right now, I would order a Zwilling. It's a great all-purpose knife. And it's not as expensive as some of the other carbon steel blades. But you want it to feel heavy in your hand. And I get it professionally sharpened once or twice a year. Professionally sharpen your knives once a year. If you are just cooking at home, right before you start cooking, hone your knife with a sharpener. And I have a video for how to do that. It's in the knife skills post on my website that if you scroll down my the front page of my website, you'll find it, and it teaches you how to hone your knife. Ooh, yeah, we should do Asian stir fry. One of the most popular recipes on my site is this really easy veggie stir fry made from frozen vegetable mix, and it is delicious. The pickled onions will last until you use them, basically, because vinegar is a preservative, and then on top of that, they're in your refrigerator. So they will save for 2-3 weeks. They'll start to break down because the vinegar will continue to break down the onions, so they'll get kind of clear near the end, and they're just not as delicious. So try to use them within a week or 2. Homemade corn tortillas, that would be a really fun lesson. Maybe I should do that as a kids class because I'm telling you my 12-year-old makes better tortillas than I do. So maybe she can do that one. When you're adding the salt with the wooden salt spoon, is it a teaspoon, just for reference? No, it is a fourth of a teaspoon. It's a really small, it's kind of a thick wooden measure. It fell somewhere, but I've measured it to test it. It's a fourth of a teaspoon. So I did 2 of those, and that would have been half a teaspoon. Why not mash the meat before it's fully cooked? You can do that, but it'll continue, if it's not fully cooked, it'll continue to glop together, for lack of a better word. So we're talking about the taco meat. Why do you not mash it until it's almost fully cooked? Because then you're just not repeating yourself. If you do that when it's not fully cooked, you're gonna have to keep doing it until it's fully cooked. So that way you just only have to do it once. Redmond real salt is available everywhere. HEB sells it, Target sells it, Kroger sells it. Look for it in the salt aisle. Freezing in glass jars, is that your preference? Yes, I mean, either one is fine. I freeze also in plastic quart containers. I'll show you guys something really quick. So I order these. You can get them at the restaurant supply store, or you can order them from Amazon. And if you use this to freeze, leave about that much, half an inch, before you close it, because the liquid expands when it freezes. So it'll fill it up once it's frozen. Always label and date what you freeze. So I freeze in both plastic and glass. I just like to tell people they can freeze in glass, because I think people think sometimes they can't, that it's gonna break, but it doesn't. Do you have a favorite tortilla? I have never met a tortilla I don't like. I like all tortillas. I like saute, I mean, right now, we have been going through tortillas like nobody's business. So right now I've been buying whatever I can find. These are Mission, these are corn Guerrero. I love the HEB in Central Market. If you're in Houston, you know, the ones they make in the store are awesome. Saute has a great grain-free, gluten-free. How do you prepare the taco shells or tortillas? Okay, good question. I'll show you guys really quickly. I'm gonna show you my stove so you can see a trick. I just turned on my flame, and unfortunately you guys can't see that, but when I am making tacos for my family, you can warm a big batch of tortillas in the oven wrapped in foil, but that takes a while. Or you can just microwave them, which doesn't taste quite as great, but it works. Or you can warm them directly on your stove. So my flame is on the lowest that it will go. This is how I make breakfast tacos for my kids in the morning. Just throw the tortilla right on the grates of your stove and warm it up. And I just flip it and then I fill it. I hope that answered your questions. Where do you get the gray skillet? It's from Staub. I will send a link to you guys. I love Staub. First of all, because it's so pretty. Second of all, it works great. It's very heavy. This is an all-purpose Staub pan that I use as a small wok to saute things. I love it, and I keep it on my stovetop all the time. I don't even put it away because I use it like almost every night. I'll send you guys a link for that. Do you just keep the purple onion in the juice the whole time until you eat them? No, when this is done, since we're gonna have these for my family tonight, I'll just leave them out like in our little buffet and put tongs in, and then everyone can kind of lift up the amount of pickled onions they want and add them to their taco. Then whatever's left, I'm gonna take and put in a storage container, a Tupperware, and I might put in like a little bit of juice, but I don't want all of that in the refrigerator when I put them away to store, because it'll just break down the onions faster. Where do you get your knives sharpened? Okay, in Houston, I get my knives sharpened at Central Market. I love to drop them off there with customer service. And I teach at Central Market in better times. So sometimes one of my friends there teaches an awesome knife skills class. So you guys should all, if you're in Houston, sign up for that. next year or this summer, whenever we're back to normal, they teach an amazing knife skills class. But they sharpen knives there. You can also take them to your local farmer's market, and they will usually sharpen them while you shop. You can take them to Bearings in Houston, and they can sharpen them there as well. Okay, are there any other questions? I think that's it. I just want to reiterate, thank you guys so much for coming. So much fun to see you all. And I hope this gives you ideas for making better tacos at home. If you make tacos with this recipe, post a picture and tag me, please, in the picture and in the caption and Instagram, and I can repost anything you guys make. And just email me any suggestions for classes you'd like to see. This is, you know, a new world for all of us, but I've been wanting to do more digital classes for so long. So this is a silver lining for me because it's making me learn new technology to teach to all of you guys. So once again, I'll follow up with an email. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have an awesome Sunday afternoon. Stay healthy. Bye.